Thanks for joining us today, my friends, in our journey through the Bible, one day at a time, Genesis to Revelation. In this year, it's Tim, uh, retired pastor, Bible teacher, your good friend today. Today's reading is in Jeremiah chapter 5 to 9, and I just have a few thoughts for you from Jeremiah chapter 9, 23 and 24. It has to do with boasting. James says boasting is evil. However, I'd like to point out that sometimes boasting is okay. You see, in these two verses, there are actually two kinds of boasting that are mentioned here. To start with, is what I would call evil boasting, verse 23. Um, Jeremiah says, "Thus saith the Lord, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, neither let the mighty man glory in his might, and let not the rich man glory in his riches." You notice that with these two verses, 23 and 24, are bracketed by the Lord taking ownership of them. Clearly, he doesn't want anybody thinking that these are just nice thoughts. But it's thus saith the Lord. This is what God thinks about this particular issue. Now, the examples here are not people who are pretending. Let's assume they really do have wisdom, strength, and riches. You know, sometimes NBA players say it's not bragging if you can do it. Well, that sometimes it is bragging. A wise man who boasts in his wisdom is the kind of person who be likely to display his degrees in frames across the wall prominently so that no visitor can miss the fact that he's been touched by greatness just to be in the presence of this wise man. A wise man who boasts in his wisdom will never let you forget the books he's read or written or owns. He'll call attention to the intellectual people that he's encountered at some time in his life. He doesn't pass up an opportunity to point out stupidity wherever he finds it, and believe me, he sees plenty of it. A mighty man who boasts in his might will want you to know of his accomplishments. You know, he bench pressed so much weight. He ran 5 miles this morning in record time, and he just feels terrible if he can't get to the gym at his usual early morning hour. Well, tell the mighty man to keep his accomplishments to himself, and you might as well ask him to skip the next 6 months of workouts. He lives for those compliments. I'm tempted to say at this point that everyone boasts of something. That's almost true, but not entirely. It doesn't have to be that way. But Jeremiah is not critical of wisdom or strength or riches. That's not the problem. The problem in each case is the boasting of these people is centered around these gifts. God in heaven sees how we boast in areas that are far too small for the people He made us to be. Wishing to extend our field of vision, enlarge our hearts, and upgrade our accomplishments, He redirects our boasting because verse 24 deals with what I would call godly boasting. Verse 24 says, "Let him that glorieth glory in this, that he understandeth and knoweth me, that I am the Lord, which exercise loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth. For in these things I delight, saith the Lord. I know the Lord, I understand what he is like." Those are two powerful statements, my friend. I'm going to assume here that they overlap, and they're both conveying the same point. Now, the Lord is saying, if we truly know him, we will understand what he's like. And unfortunately, the people in Jeremiah's audience didn't know the Lord. You back up to verse 3 in this chapter, Jeremiah 9:3. It says, "They bend their tongues like the bow for lies, but they are not valiant for the truth upon the earth, for they proceed from evil to evil, and they know not me, saith the Lord." You see, there are three things about the Lord that people who know him understand. Loving kindness was one. That's a loaded word, isn't it? Now, to my way of thinking, it contains the ideas of both grace and mercy. Those are both qualities that God has in infinity. Judgment means doing the right thing. We can count on God to do what's right. Now, take the early life and ministry of Jesus, for example. When he came to this earth, that was God's loving kindness. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. When he cleansed the temple, that was his righteousness. When Jesus did not intervene to stop Jerusalem from being destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD, that was God meting out justice. That's the way I am, God is saying. Loving kindness, righteousness, justice. And why is it good for people to boast in their knowledge of God? It's because this is something that they can't do for themselves. They receive whatever knowledge they have of God by simple grace. Now, Paul did have some things to brag about. If you look at his life and his accomplishments, he'd seen heaven of all things, 2 Corinthians 12:5. But he said, of myself, I will not boast except in my infirmities. On another occasion, Paul said, it's necessary that I boast. I must boast. But then he doesn't start boasting about himself, just the opposite. He is moved at the manifest working of God in the people that he loves. He says, I won't glory, I won't boast except in my infirmities. Why is that? Because it's the point of our weakness where we truly come to know the Lord. Well, meditate on that today. Will you give that some thought? And stay in the Word. Keep reading. Tomorrow our reading is in Jeremiah chapter 10 and 11. And so be reading there. I'll look forward to being back with you again very soon. Have a great day, friends.